The glimmer of hope I was referring to was in part about the fact that Hamas have released two hostages. They are US citizens. That happened last night, a mother and her teenage daughter. Would you like to tell us more about them and what condition they were in when they were taken to a military base?
So I can't discuss too much in detail the situation of Natalie and Judith Ranan. Indeed, they were released late last night by Hamas with the assistance of the International Committee of the Red Cross. Unfortunately, there are still 210 other people being held by Hamas as we speak. That number has increased today. We've been able to confirm more people being held hostage by Hamas. They were transferred, Natalie and Judith were transferred to a military base and to their families, and indeed it is the aftermath obviously is traumatic for them. This is the hostage issue is at the top of our priorities, and we are watching very carefully, trying to bring in more information and intelligence and exhaust the diplomatic efforts in order to bring them home. And that is, of course, key concern to our operational planning and activities that are currently we are conducting against Hamas as we speak.
Understood. Given the sensitivities around the information, what can you share with us about what you've learned about the other hostages and perhaps their condition following the release yesterday?
Well, naturally, I can't go into specifics at this time. We are still learning, and there is a lot to be learned from what's going on. There is still mountains of intelligence from the body cameras that the terrorists were carrying, and indicating the magnitude of the attack, the strategic approach that they took, the actions that they were permitted or instructed to do, such as rape, beheading, mutilation, and abduction, and of course execution. So this was a systematic massacre of people and a systematic abduction of civilians, men, women, children, from the young age of 9 months all the way up to the age of 88. And they are at the top of our priority.
You've said a couple of times that the hostages are at the top of your military priorities, and I'm sure the families of those hostages will be comforted by that. With that in mind, Gaza has remained under siege now for 2 weeks, and the idea has been mooted, has it not, that actually a loosening of that total siege, including water, food and fuel, may lead to a further trade between Israel and Hamas for the lives of hostages and give civilian Palestinians, some of whom, according to UNRWA, are dying of starvation, as well as from the bombing, some hope. Is that a possibility?
Well, I'm not in the position to talk about negotiations or attempts to bring the hostages home, and we need to respect both the families who are, their last 2 weeks have been torn to pieces, and indeed, looking forward to the potential ground operation that we may manage and may mobilize. Indeed, part of that ground operation will be a humanitarian effort to make sure that the civilians can get what they need in order to live through this war. And it is a war. It's different from anything we've endured in the past, any type of conflict we've had.
Understood, but they are not getting what they need, and we know that. We have this horrific death toll on the Israeli side of 1,400 people dead. We know that the number of Palestinians killed is now over 4,000. And what the international community is asking for at this moment is a de-escalation and the protection of civilians. And laying total siege to Gaza is in no way contributing to the welfare of civilian Palestinians. It is not only making their lives unbearable. As I say, UNRWA, the aid agency, the United Nations aid agency, say they believe that people are already starving to death. This isn't a military tactic of modern warfare. This is something out of the Middle Ages.
UNRWA also announced a couple of days ago that Hamas had commandeered fuel and medical supplies from one of their compounds.
That was a tweet that they then deleted. May I just keep, I'm not asking you about UNRWA. I'm asking you because you're from the IDF. Lieutenant Colonel, let me just finish the sentence. I'm asking you to comment on the things that that is under your auspices as the Israeli Defense Force. The total siege of Gaza is something that we last saw in modern warfare used in the siege of Srebrenica, which was later judged a war crime. Is there a chance that the Israelis are able to remove the total siege as part of its military tactics, given that is the case?
Israel is under no obligation to supply Gaza any of its needs at all. And
under a deal in 2004 where the authority there in Gaza paid for energy and water supplies, there is in fact an onus. I looked at the deal myself.
2004 was before Hamas came to power, and 2023 is when Hamas declared war on Israel.
But you said there wasn't a duty. There was, in fact, a duty. You've decided to abrogate that responsibility as part of a military campaign.
No responsibility to give Hamas the governing authority of the Gaza Strip any of those supplies, any of those needs, and that is the decision of the government today. I would say, and from again bringing it down to the military's perspective, there is an understanding that our military role, is distinction between civilians and Hamas terrorists. That is why we tell people to evacuate areas when Hamas tries to keep them.
There is no distinction in the siege, in the total siege. There is no distinction between Hamas fighters, who, according to experts on LBC, amount to about 15,000 people, with part-timers coming to about 50,000, and the population, which is 2.3 million. So there is no distinction in the application of the siege itself.
So in a terrorist organization that runs a territory as a staging ground for massacre, brutality, and butchery, you are suggesting do nothing, raise a white flag, and hope they go away.
I haven't suggested that at all, Lieutenant Colonel, and you're aware of that. I haven't made that suggestion at all. Let's move on to the aid convoys then.
They are running the Gaza Strip as a staging ground against our people to butcher, rape, murder, massacre, abduct. That is their responsibility. The Gaza Strip is the responsibility of Hamas, not of Israel. We left the Gaza Strip hoping that they would like to live in peace with us. They did not. They chose not to live in peace, but they chose to butcher, rape, murder, abduct. These atrocities are their responsibility. The people of Gaza are the responsibility of Hamas, their governing authority. If you are excusing them and hoping that giving them...
I'm sorry, I will have to jump in here. I am not excusing them. You are well aware that that is not the case. I am asking you about your military strategy, which you say, the heart of which you say is ensuring that civilians are not affected or that is minimised. Let's talk about then the aid convoys that have just started going through. 20 trucks have just come through the border. The United Nations says that around 500 trucks need to actually pass through on a daily basis. Do you think that is likely?
I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. I'm afraid we are preparing for ground mobilization to destroy Hamas, the terrorist organization. Indeed, there are humanitarian needs that need to be met. That is our obligation within the laws of armed conflict. And indeed, we are taking the necessary precautions in order to be prepared when we mobilize, if we mobilize, that civilian needs in areas that we control are met. But, and I would say this again, Israel does not control the border with Egypt. The diplomacy and the diplomats negotiate what goes through, how it goes through, how much goes through. Egypt decided to allow today 20 trucks to go through.
But Israel was part of the negotiation. But Israel, hang on a minute, just a factual matter. Israel was part of the negotiations about the reopening of the border because the IDF were extremely concerned, were they not, that some of the aid that would come through will go to Hamas instead of civilians. So I think that is the context in which we are having this discussion. I'm afraid my time with you has come to an end.